Details about a pending ban on the sale of tobacco at certain stores in Barnstable on this episode of Barnstable Today. It's Thursday, December 20th, 2012. I'm Sarah Colvin. The Barnstable Board of Health is considering banning the sale of tobacco at pharmacies in town. I sat down with Dr. Wayne Miller, chair of the Barnstable Board of Health. Dr. Miller filled us in on the details of the proposal. Good morning, everyone. You are watching a Barnstable this morning. I'm Sarah Colvin, and I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Wayne Miller to our studio. He, of course, is the chair of the Barnstable Board of Health. Good morning, Dr. Miller.
Good morning, Sarah.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me.
So, Dr. Miller, today we're going to talk a little bit about the proposed ban on tobacco products at pharmacies and kind of other healthcare stores here in town. Can you give me take us back to the beginning of this and talk to me about why this is on the table?
Well, I think the beginning of this actually goes before I was on the Board of Health, when the board actually was the first health-related entity in the state to propose a ban on public smoking. And our restaurant smoking ban was the first one in the Commonwealth, I believe. That has since been expanded, as you know, for both health reasons and other reasons to a lot of other public areas, including the beaches. About 3 years ago, I believe now, the city of Boston passed a ban on sale of tobacco products in healthcare facilities. And their argument, I think, was a fair one, in that a facility that is providing health-related care and advice should not be one that's also selling instruments that are known to be detrimental to health. Again, this was passed, I believe, 3 years ago. It was met with very little resistance in Boston, and since has been adopted in some form, similar form, by close to 30 other communities across the state. We've been talking about it for, I think about a year, and we've waited to see some of the other regulations that have been drafted by other states. We've passed them by town attorneys, and we've now come up with a draft document that we're going to open up for discussion. Basically, it's going to prohibit sale of tobacco products in healthcare institutions. I think most will not be controversial. The ones that will be controversial is pharmacies.
Right. And so how do you define a healthcare institution? Obviously, you can't walk into Cape Cod Hospital and buy a pack of Lucky Strikes. But, as we said, the pharmacies like the CVS's, the Rite Aids, et cetera, so how do we make that definition?
Well, that's going to be one of the difficult issues here, I believe. I think the one part that nobody will deny is that if you have a pharmacy which dispenses drugs on a prescription basis, you're a pharmacy. I think where we're going to run into some difficulty, in fact, will be if the pharmacy is not the main activity of the institution. Now, my personal feeling, but we'll see what happens in the public discussions of this. My personal feeling is if pharmacy is in the main descriptor of the thing, Rite Aid pharmacy, Walgreens pharmacy, CVS pharmacy, it's a pharmacy, even though they may have other things that they sell.
Right.
The question becomes, when you have something like a food store related pharmacy, does that become under the aegis of this regulation? And that will be something that we'll have to discuss. Right now, as far as I know, I think we only have one such situation in town, and I believe that's the pharmacy at the
medicine store on West Main Street, or the pharmacy. Are we talking about the grocery store?
No, the grocery store, the Stop and Shop. I think that's the only one. The Stop and Shop in Hyannis is the only food store, because I believe Shaw's and Star's discontinued their pharmacies, and so did the Marston Mills Stop and Shop. So that's about the only one that'll be a controversy.
Absolutely, and so again, in terms of implementing this in kind of looking at the future, I mean there aren't that many pharmacies in town, and so really I don't think it would be really detrimental to those pharmacies. Obviously, CVS isn't making its most money off of cigarette sales, etc. How has this perhaps over the course of the time in which you've been discussing this, how has it changed, or what kind of issues have there been? Any issues raised ways that maybe you didn't think about right away. Things, as we just mentioned, whether the pharmacies and food stores will be ones that are considered. Any other issues that you think might be kind of sticky wickets as we get closer to this?
Well, Health Division staff has expressed some concern in terms of limiting sales simply because of limiting personal freedom. We're not prohibiting people from buying cigarettes. What we're doing is looking at the circumstances under which they can buy cigarettes. And I think just to go a little bit further in that, most of the pharmacies now are offering flu clinics. Some of them are having walk-in clinics. I mean, they're really becoming more of a medical provider. So I think that it's perfectly reasonable not to sell cigarettes in those situations. What's come up basically was the definition of a pharmacy, which was your first question.
Right.
And I think, Tom Geiler just came up with the first big question, which is, how about, because we had thought, no, prescriptions, any place that deals with prescriptions. Well, Tom came up with a very valid point. Eyeglasses are prescriptions.
Right.
Does that prohibit places like, Lens Crafters doesn't sell cigarettes anyway, but BJ's.
Right.
And so I think that's one of the things we're going to have to discuss. I mean, is it only drugs? Are eyeglasses included? That'll be a source of discussion. But we've gone with all due haste in this, in terms of going back and forth with town attorneys, trying to come up with a regulation that has built on the experience of other towns.
Right.
And we're not going to rush into a vote this next meeting. We're going to open it up. We've sent this out to all stakeholders. We'll have an opportunity to discuss it with them. And then we'll go forward from there, and we'll do it in the best interest of public health for the citizens of the town.
Sure. Now, I believe Chatham, I think, is the only other Cape town that has such a ban in place. Have you talked to officials at all from Chatham to see how it's worked in that town?
No, we haven't at this point in time, again, because we weren't quite sure how ours was going to be in final form. And I think as we go forward, if there are any, as we talked about earlier, sometimes we've been totally surprised at the pushback we've gotten on certain of our topics, and other times at how little pushback. So, if this sails through without any opposition, it'll go forward without a lot of discussion between us and other towns. If there, in fact, are serious questions that are raised, then we will, in fact, talk with our counterparts in other towns in more detail about the specific questions that are raised and how they may have impacted the other towns. Sure.
So the Board of Health is meeting again in January, and you will be having a public hearing on this proposed ban?
Correct.
Absolutely. So people, who are either for and against are welcome to come to the meeting. Do you know the exact date of that? January 15th, I believe? January
15th at 3 p.m. I don't know where it will be on the agenda, but that will be published, I believe, a week ahead of time. So people can look at the town website and get the specific position on the agenda.
Well, Dr. Miller, anything else about this proposed ban on the sale of tobacco products? Obviously, I'm guessing this includes not only cigarettes, but also cigars, chewing tobacco, etc.
Yeah, I think the big question now is whether to include e-cigarettes, the electronic cigarettes. And again, it's interesting to me, whereas the information on the health risks of tobacco products, whether they be smoked or chewed or whatever, is very clear and uniform. The data on e-cigarettes really is controversial at this point in time. There are some studies that show no health problems with it, although they may be addictive.
Right.
And other studies that show serious health problems with them. So, we're going to have to take that under consideration.
Certainly. Well, Dr. Miller, I thank you so much for stopping by and joining us today on Barnstable This Morning.
Thank you for having me, sir.
Thank you so much. Our guest today has been Dr. Wayne Miller, who's the chair of the Barnstable Board of Health. I'm Sarah Colvin. The Barnstable Board of Health will take up the matter at its January 15th meeting. A reminder, Town Council meets tonight. The meeting begins at 7 o'clock in the second floor hearing room here at Town Hall. It will air live on Channel 18. With Barnstable Today, I'm Sarah Colvin.